Welcome to Open House, the real estate and mortgage show on News Talk 580 CFRA.
With Frank Napolitano and Paul Rushforth, here is Steve Gregory.
Live in brilliant audio.
Live in studio. Welcome to show number 905.
904.
904, Open House.
We're not sure we're going to make 905.
Yeah, well, we're making
I'm getting old, you know.
Yeah, I know. You know, we got to do something for our 1000 show. We got to do something big.
All right.
Maybe you can buy breakfast.
Buy breakfast?
Oh, Jesus.
I knew that was coming.
Gee, just for the listeners, I walked into Starbucks where I usually pick up breakfast every Saturday, and the girl said, "Is Frank still doing the show with you? We haven't seen him in decades."
Right.
It's true. Anyways,
right,
let's get to
business. Here we go. Last weekend of June already.
Yeah.
I don't know how this is going so fast, but it sure is.
Yeah.
Incredible, eh?
Oh.
Like the days are getting shorter. I miss those.
You know what? Yeah, we missed those posts. You know what's funny, though, is the summer is going to go by really quick. I remember we were in May thinking, okay, well, June's coming and then summer's coming. Before long, we're going to be in August and summer's going to be over.
Yeah,
It goes too quick, especially when we're living in a climate with weather like we have. I mean, there's a lot of people that love the winter weather, and that's great. But, you know, it's nice to have no snow and have beautiful weather. But I just
we're still waiting for the spring market.
Yeah, well, no, we saw that. I mean,
it later, though.
Yeah, we saw that. It did delay, though. It's 2 years in a row we've had a delay spring market. You know, year before, Jan, Feb, March were very average. Usually they're very, strong and robust. April was decent. May was okay. June, and then we had a very good June, July. And this year we saw a very average Jan, Feb, March. April was decent. May was quite strong. And in June, I think, is going to be quite strong. When the numbers come out, I think it's going to be quite strong as well. So it's.
Do you think technically we're still in what should have been a spring market right now?
Well, we're in a delayed spring market. Yeah. So we've seen this 2 years in a row. We're in a delayed spring market. And, in a balanced market. We're in a very strong balanced market. Where it's solid for both. And I just about everybody, I mean, I ran into my financial advisor yesterday in an elevator, and he says to me, he's like, "So how's the market? It's a little bit tough." And I get it from just about everybody how tough this market is. And I'm like, I'm not sure what market you're following, because it's not tough at all. I mean, our number of sales year to date is flat, which is, I mean, it's not a weak market. I mean, we're up 12.6%. The average sale price is up.
You as a company?
As a company, we're up 12.6. The average sale price is up between 2 and 3%. We're at 2.4%. So that's a fairly decent market. I mean, it's 2 to 3 to 4% is quite a strong market. And that's the market we're in right now. So when people are like, "Ooh, tough market." No, it's not a tough market. This is a typical Ottawa balanced market. And we saw some really, really strong markets as we were going through COVID and near the end of COVID. And I think people thought, "Ooh, this must be the new norm." Well, it's not the new norm. This is the new norm. And guess what, realtors out there? We have to work hard to get these deals done now. Like, sellers are somewhat grumpy a little bit because they're taking a little bit longer to sell. Buyers have a lot more opportunity and a lot more choice, which is great. So it's more of a balanced market. Before, it was very unfair for buyers, and it was really fair for sellers. And, we've seen really unfair the other way around. And right now we're like, yeah, sellers, if your home shows well and it's priced well, it's going to sell. Buyers, you're going to make an offer and make a strong offer, you're going to get that house. We're in a balanced, strong market is what I think we're in.
You're talking about real estate agents. Average earnings, outpacing inflation. Guess who's leading the way? Real estate agents.
Well,
I've always said they make way too much money.
Grew by
9.7%.
What do you think the average agent makes a week? $1,372.
A week? Wow. Well, listen.
Paul spends that on breakfast, apparently.
Well, with my expense, if I made that, I'd be out of business. So, no, but listen, I'm going to go out on a limb and say we work hard. Like, realtors work really, really hard. Someone put a post on Facebook one day, and it's like, people just think money just comes to us. But when you see what we do, and we're probably one of the only...
Well, what the good ones do.
Yeah, but we're probably one of the only professions in the world where we put so much time, energy, effort, and money into real estate, into listings and buyers. We have to sell or help someone buy to even make money. So do you know how many times that we'll list a house and I'll spend thousands and tens of thousands of dollars to get this home sold, and maybe it doesn't sell? Well, I'm out tens of thousands of dollars, right? What other profession?
Or the seller changes their mind.
But the seller changes their mind. Well, guess what? I'm out all that money, and I haven't made a penny on that deal. So I think realtors, I think it's very unfair when you say that, we make too much money.
I didn't say that. I didn't.
Well, Frank did, but I know he's joking. But I would like.
I believe you are making too much. But...
I would like to say that we work really, really hard. And if I told you what my expenses are, Steve, in a month, you'd be sick to your stomach. Yeah. So I don't think we make too much. I think we work hard for.
No, I never said you made too much. I just said
you just said it, Stephen.
I said you went up 9.7% from last year.
Yeah. And that's not Steve's statistics. That's Canada.
That's Stats Canada. Yeah. Average earnings.
So you didn't see mortgage brokers on that list, did you?
No.
That's why, Paul, you need to buy breakfast moving forward.
I'm getting texts from my girlfriend Petra, and she's like, "You're also on call all the time and available 24/7." And I can tell she's mad at that. But it's true. It's true. Like we are. One thing, my daughter who just graduated from Queen's University says to me after a 5-year degree, I think I want to be a realtor. And I'm like, that could have come before the 5-year degree. But I did say to her, I said, listen, there's so many benefits of being a realtor, and it's such a wonderful business, and much like Frank's business, but you are a slave to your phone.
Yeah.
You are definitely a slave to your phone, and that's probably one of the biggest downfalls of a real estate agent is you could be out for dinner with friends or with your wife or your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, and your phone rings and someone needs you, they need you now.
Yeah, the job is other people set your hours.
Other people set your hours unless you set the expectations, which is something I think we do quite strongly. Is you have to set expectations.
But as a business owner, you're on call 24/7.
100%.
It just comes with the territory. As a real estate agent, you could pull back. I mean, it might impact your business, but you could say, listen, I'm not taking calls after 7 o'clock. That's my family time. And that's
family time
is
about an hour, right? If you're an agent,
yeah, if that, it's listen. But Frank, you're right. As a business owner, and whether it's mortgages, whether it's real estate, whether it's construction, whether it's whatever it is,
you're on call
as a business owner, and that's why I think that entrepreneurs are the most undervalued people. That they should be valued much more because the risk you take, the stress level. The money and energy and time you put into to growing that business, it's hard. It's really. I have so much respect for it. Oh, here we go.
No, but in many ways, you're self-employed, Steve. I
am self-employed,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if a call comes in and you need.
Yeah, there's no such thing as weekends or evenings.
No, there's not.
Something's got to be done. You do it.
What are you doing this weekend? Probably working. Probably working.
Well, look at me now.
Yeah.
Going back, Paul, I want to ask you. So I've had some clients that in certain neighborhoods, the price wars are back, or it seems like there's certain houses where there's price wars that seem to be back, where I've had clients call me and say, Frank, I need to go in firm because otherwise I'm not getting this property. And
like back to multiple offers?
Yeah, we're seeing some houses that are listed where we're not taking offers till next Wednesday kind of thing. And then there's multiple offers. So
is it a market to hold back listings?
There is a percentage of the market and a percentage of the areas that you can hold back offers. We have seen that. If your home shows really, really good, and it's priced well, it's going to sell. And sometimes it's going into multiple offer. We're seeing more multiple offers when it's in an area with less sort of new home builders and less competition. So, an area that only has older homes, that doesn't have the new home track builders in there, we're seeing multiple offers on some of those areas. When you look at an area that most people are moving to, like the Canadas, the Stittsvilles, the Orleans, the Barhavens, those areas, there's lots of track builders, a lot of people moving there, but you don't see as many multiple offers. Whereas if you have a mature neighborhood that doesn't have the track builders in there and there's very few homes for sale and it shows well and it's priced well, there's a very good chance you're getting a multiple offer if you structure it and prepare it properly to get that multiple offer.
Yeah, a client this week, they lost out in the winner, 100,000 over list. It's like, oh boy,
wow,
because we're not. I haven't seen too many of those,
and that's on a $1.5 million or $1.15 million listing, and they ended up selling for 1.25. So
that's the COVID craze.
Yes,
we are seeing multiple offers where they're 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 over asking, which is kind of back to the normal days.
Yeah.
Whereas during COVID, 100,000 was like you're not getting it if you only go 100. So that's shocking to hear that. We're not getting very many of those. But we're getting lots of 5, 10, 15, 20 over asking right now.
With more than 2 people involved?
Sometimes. 2 or 3 involved. You're not getting the 12, 15 offers anymore. But
What I don't want to see is what we saw during COVID, which was you're in the top 3. You want to sharpen your pencil. I'm just not a fan of that because if I'm number 1, what do I got to sharpen my offer for? I'm already number 1. Tell me if I'm number 2 or 3.
Take out your conditions.
Yeah, but if I'm number 1, I don't want to be, and I get it. Like if you're representing the vendor, you're doing what's best for the vendor, but it just seems not fair.
It does suck. When I actually bought my house with Petra in Orleans, I was in it was between me and 3 other agents, and they wouldn't tell me who the other agents were. Turns out I was in competition with one of my own agents.
Yeah.
And it came down between me and one of my own agents, and I ended up paying $100,000 more than what his offer was. So I overpaid by $100,000.
There's honesty and credibility there, though.
Yeah.
Your agent didn't come up to you and say, "Hey, I'm in on this."
No, he didn't. And listen, I that's something I had to suck up. I mean, I paid $100,000 more, but we wanted the house, right?
And where is that agent now?
Yeah, I suck,
521-TALK, 521-8255. We will be right back. Welcome back to the show. Paul Rushforth here, Frank Napolitano here.
Steve Gregory here, Greg Tilley here.
The whole gang is here again.
Yeah, you forget, why do you forget about yourself and Greg? It's very rude.
Well, because we both have the same name. I don't want people to be confused.
Yeah.
Inflation, 1.7%. Sort of.
Well, again, a lot of it's because of the carbon tax. We're seeing the...
Otherwise, it's 2.3.
Otherwise, it's 2.3, which, again, is not at that 2%, but it's certainly not horrible either. It's the core inflation that's the big concern for Tiff Macklem and Bank of Canada. It's closer to 3%, and until that gets under control, I'm afraid that Bank of Canada may stall again on a rate cut in July. There's another report coming out, inflation report coming out July 15th. The thinking is that, again, the numbers will be fairly similar to what we just saw for the month of May.
What do you think Trump's new announcement is going to do, though, to all these numbers?
I don't know that it's going to do anything because they were still in the negotiating phase anyway, right up until the third week of July. So
do you think most people are when it comes to the tariffs now? I mean, I don't mean to sound insensitive because there's a lot of people who are really struggling because of these tariffs. But do you think there's a degree of our population right now are just like tariff schmariffs? Like we've been talking about this now.
It's getting there.
I think we're trumped out for sure.
I think we're trumped out, and I think people are like, whatever tariffs, like. We're sick of Trump talking about this. I think there's a part of the society that's like that.
There is, and I think he's feeling it too, that people just don't want to talk about it anymore. So I think he's got another month or so. Anytime he can get in the headlines, he's going to find a reason to do it. And yesterday was because Canadian government's charging digital tax on the American, then all of a sudden he's going to pause negotiations on the trade agreement. In essence, we have a trade agreement in place already that has not expired.
That he signed.
We shouldn't even be negotiating.
But that he signed in his first term.
Agreed. So again, he lives in his own world. His rules are his rules unless they don't go his way. Then the law's behind them. So.
I do think this is going to impact the states bigger than they think it is in the way that there's a lot of companies right now because I'm friends with guys who are electricians and builders and plumbers, and a lot of them now have found ways to buy Canadian and will never go back to American now. Some of them have to buy American, but there's a lot of these different businesses now that are only buying Canadian. Like when we talked to Charles from Clement Homes, he's like, my HVAC equipment used to always come from the States. I found a Canadian supplier and I won't move from this Canadian supplier. Now, unless the Canadian companies start gouging, which I hope they don't, but there's a lot of businesses now that have found alternatives to an American product and are going to stick with these Canadian products.
Well, we're 3 days away from Canada Day, and you're going to see the most patriotic probably day ever because Canadians have just pulled together that much closer. And it's nice to see the Canadians are traveling within Canada because I'll tell you, I was at the Mortgage Center Owners Conference, which was held in Niagara-on-the-Lake last week. It's stunningly beautiful. Like it's a part of the country that a lot of people have never been to. But go into some of these little towns in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and they are beautiful, nice little shops, great wineries, great way to keep your money in our own country and actually support local businesses.
Let's see if Frank says that in the middle of winter when his next conference is in Saskatoon.
Well, it won't be in Saskatoon.
Instead of being
in Iceland.
But I am going to BC, so there's a conference in January that would have been somewhere south, and instead this year they're doing it in BC. So we're starting to see, Scotiabank's conference that I just attended 3 weeks ago was in Quebec City. It was supposed to be in New Orleans. So we're starting to see even the big lenders start to say, well, we're not going to go to the U.S., We are going to go to other countries potentially, and like one of them has got it in the Caymans. So, but there's certainly staying away from the U.S., it feels like, en masse. And you're right, that's going to hurt them eventually. Tourism is a big piece. And in Canada, I think tourism will be better this year, but from our own people. So our own Canadians will visit other places and stay in Canada, which will be good for our tourism business. So I don't think our tourism business will be hit. And again, I mean, it keeps jobs, and that's the other part. I mean, you know, the interest rates are all about employment. So the unemployment rate is still expected to go up, and we could get the mid-sevens by the end of the year. So right now we're at 7%. We could get to 7.5% by the end of the year, which is not a good stat, but it might help lower interest rates. And the other part that I say, and you're right, I think we're getting tired of the tariff talk and all the tariffs. I think Trump will find something else now to focus on, and I think his number one goal is going to be to lower interest rates south of the border too, because he sees that the real estate market is not robust at all in the U.S., and that jobs are impacted by that, because if they stop building homes in the U.S. because they're not changing over, well, then that's going to hit their employment numbers as well. So
they'll stop building homes when they can't find the lumber.
Well, we're also seeing the real estate. A lot of areas in the States right now are in trouble because people aren't moving. Right, the interest rates
are too high.
Rates are too high, so builders are not building as fast. And so he is really hurting the economy. I mean, he's trying to do something that I think is now will it help them in the long run but hurt them in the short run? Potentially. But I think right now that we're seeing a lot of people that are hurting in the States, and what he's trying to do around the world, I kind of get what he's trying to do, but he's really crippling his own country right now, which is tough.
Trying to do is drive revenue to knock down some of the debt that the U.S. has accrued. Yeah. But he's doing it in the wrong way.
But he's adding more debt.
He's adding more debt. He's just doing it in the wrong format. Eventually he'll realize it. Maybe he won't. But at the end of the day, it is impacting Canadians. It is impacting a lot of people here because the interest rates haven't come down as much as they should have based on where our economy is at.
And fixed rates haven't moved at all.
Correct, because of what's happening south of the border, because fixed rates are all based on bond markets, and bond markets are very closely tied to the 10-year bond market in the U.S. And if the 10-year bond market doesn't go down, well, then Canadian bonds aren't going down either, and therefore fixed rates remain where they are. And that's why we're seeing fixed rates stalled for the last 3, 4, 5 months, having a little bit of a yo-yo effect. I mean, we saw them go into the threes very, very for a short period of time, and now they're back into the low fours. You can still get something in the high threes, a renewal with a bank, but you have to negotiate it because they're not giving it to you up front.
What about our GDP going down?
Well, again, that's good news for interest rates.
Yeah.
That's really good news for interest rates. So, again, there's three factors, inflation being the big one, in my opinion, employment and GDP. Employment and GDP are going in the right direction if you're looking for interest rates to come down. The only thing that's not going in that right direction is inflation right now, where, you know, it's been stubbornly the core inflation been stubbornly staying in the mid twos to high twos, and Bank of Canada is pretty adamant that they need to get that into the low twos for them to restart cutting rates like they were doing in the first half and last half of last year.
You think at the end of July we're going to have a stagnant no movement?
Yeah, I think no rate cut in July, and then after that there's one September 17th, and I think that there's a better chance of one happening in September, because then hopefully by then the inflation will have calmed down. We saw the oil prices go way up over a 2-week period during the Middle East, and now that there's now that they're so far they say they're at peace, the oil has come back down to the mid 60s, but it hit the 70s, and we need it to be in the low 60s so that inflation doesn't obviously turn its ugly head again. Because if oil stays up, then food prices are going to start going up, and then that's going to hit us again.
Are we still looking at 1 or 2 more rate cuts, do you think, this year?
Well, I think one is a certainty. It's the second one that I think that's up in the air. So the first one, it's going to be either in September or October. I think is going to be the next rate cut.
Well, we thought July was a guarantee in the rate cut as well. But
what other information's got to come out in the next month?
Well, inflation,
jobs, and
employment, and GDP are coming out before the announcement.
So a lot can happen.
30. A lot can happen, but right now the consensus of inflation, core inflation, is that it's going to remain very close to where it's at right now. And if that stays where it's at, the only way the Bank of Canada, I think, triggers a rate cut at the end of July is if something happens negatively on the trade front, or if somehow the core inflation drops to that 2% mark. If it could drop to that 2% mark, that's where we're going to see Bank of Canada say, okay, we can resume rate cutting again.
And the worst part is even once we get a stagnant or stalled rate announcement, it does impact the real estate market. The optimism just gets popped right out of the market. So,
but it's not
horrible.
But
where are we at compared to where we were last year at this time?
It's not horrible. Well, we're down 1 percentage point because they started in June. So we're down more than that. We're down almost 2 percentage points because they came down 2.25 percentage points. So
I think people can still stomach where we are right now.
Yeah, I think people that were waiting for rate cuts are ready to buy now.
No,
I think, well, they're definitely ready to buy. They should be ready to buy because there's lots of opportunity out there, and rates will eventually come down. And I think people are stomaching that low 4% or around.
If you're buying, maybe, but if you're renewing your mortgage and you're coming off of 169 and 179, that's where it's tough. So all of a sudden, if you're in a townhouse and you want to move to a single home, and you've got 179, and now your mortgage is going up to 4%. Are you considering moving up to that single home with the interest rate at 4%? Likely not, because you're already going to feel the pinch just in your townhouse going up. So that's the challenge that this market faces right now, that the real estate market and Canadians face right now, is that how do they justify buying a bigger home because they should after 5 years? And listen, they built up some really good equity in their home, which is fantastic. But it doesn't take away from the fact that if you're going to now spend another $150,000 to upgrade your home, and your interest rate's going to go from 1.79 to 4%, that's a big hit on that bottom line. And not many Canadians are able to take that in.
And gas prices and food
else.
Prices and shelter and blah, blah, blah,
I was in such a good mood when I got here.
Well, Stephen, the one thing about
Stephen, what are you mad at me?
That's because I'm mad at you right now because you told me real estate agents make too much money at the start of the show. But I will say that it is where I'm seeing less confidence with consumers in just with what's going on in the world and pricing of just commodities and essentials. And I think that a rate adjustment lower brings out that optimism. And I think when nothing happens and it remains stagnant, I think the frustration comes in, and then they get what's going on there. They're like, you know what? Maybe we don't move. Maybe we do, sit tight because I can't afford groceries. I can't afford gas. And the one thing about this show, Steve, is Steven, sorry, because I'm still mad. The one thing about this show is we are realists. We're telling you the real truth. We're not trying to be fear mongers, but we're telling you the real truth. This is what's happening in the world, and we're just relaying it. Okay, Steven, now we can go to break.
So you think agents make too much?
Oh, here we
521
go.
Talk, 521-8255. We'll be right back. Back to the show. So you're optimistic the June numbers will be good?
I am, Steve. I am very. See, I'm not mad anymore. I'm quite optimistic. I mean, we've had a very strong month. I mean, we'll probably end up with about 65, almost 70 sales, which is a strong one. And I like to think the market's been fairly strong as well. So we'll probably see the number of sales, I would think, would be up.
You think it'll be a busy summer, July and August?
I do. I really do, because there's been a very, very quiet start to spring. And, in past, when there's a quiet start to spring, we usually get a delayed spring, and that will sometimes go into the summer months. And there's a lot of people that delayed putting their house on the market. They kind of wanted to wait to see what was happening with rates. They wanted to see what was happening with pricing, and they wanted to see what was happening with tariffs in the world.
And we're still waiting.
Well, but I think one thing is we kind of know which way rates are going. I mean, we know they're coming down. They're slower than what we were hoping. We know what's happening.
At least they're steady, right?
At least they're steady. And you can stomach them now. We see pricing that's gone up. I mean, our average sale price is up a couple percent, which is decent, a strong market. So we know that, prices are going up. And the inventory's super, super high. There's loads of inventory in the market right now, which is great. So it's a great, great environment to buy and to sell your property. And people will say, well, come on, it's either going to be good to buy or good to sell. And I'm like, it's good for both, to be honest.
What are days on market now?
I don't have the days on market. At the end of June, we'll see what the days on market are. But what
do you anticipate?
35.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah, which is fine, which is absolutely fine. Sorry. But you know what? I think that if you're a buyer, you have lots of opportunity in this market, more opportunity than you've probably had in 4 to 5 years. But if you're a seller, you also have a lot of opportunity because buyers are coming out of the woodwork because the rates are coming down. So
they've been waiting a while.
When we let's say you had 20% of the buyers looking, we might have like 60% of the buyers looking now. So we have a bigger buyer pool. Rates are coming down. Prices have remained pretty steady. I mean, up 2.4%, so pretty steady. And so you're getting a house for cheaper. The money is cheaper. and it's coming down even more, and there's tons of inventory. Great time to buy. If your home shows well and it's presented well, you will sell that home, and it will be for a good dollar. So it's a strong market for both, and this is what we call a typical Ottawa market, which we've seen before the craze of the pandemic. And this is a market everyone wants to buy and everyone wants to sell in. It's a good market.
What are people coming off of now that are renewing? And what are they going to be coming off of in the next year?
High ones, eh?
Mid ones to high ones, if you took a 5-year fix.
Right now?
So right now we've got...
So this is crunch time then, huh?
We're talking to a lot of clients that did their mortgages in the fall, obviously, because we're trying to get ahead of all the renewals. And most of them are in the high ones, low twos. So anywhere from 189 to 204. As we get into the latter part of the year, we'll start getting into the 169, 159. And that is a big jump. Now, it's not horrible. So I had a client yesterday, and their payment's going up $125 a month. Not horrible. But they have a smaller mortgage.
Should they redo their amortization? Or?
No, just leaving it the way it is. I think where we're really going to feel it is the latter part of next year and into 2022, because that's when the price of homes went up. So right now we're still at that phase where if we go back 5 years, the real estate market was just starting to get going again, because we went through that first 3 or 4 months where no open houses, no listings, nobody can go on a home. You were locked down. But, if we start getting into the fall and into early 2021, that's when we started seeing the real estate prices start to go up. And again, most people bought because they would never have been able to afford that home had the interest rates not been as low as they were.
But they still have to qualify, right?
They did, but qualifying is one thing. I always say you can qualify for X amount, but it doesn't mean it's a real number that's going to allow you to continue to live the lifestyle that you're accustomed to. So it's not always about meeting that qualifying rate as much as it's a good guideline to go by. At the end of the day, for some people, they were making a decision based on what their monthly payment was going to be, because that's something they were comfortable with. Well, what they didn't expect is that the interest rates would be, I think a lot of them, the thinking was the interest rates are likely going to be higher at your renewal.
3-ish, right?
They didn't expect them to be in the 4s. They expected them to be in the high 2s, low 3s.
Well, we talk about people 5 years ago coming off these mid to high ones, and our average sale price in, let's say, 2019, 5.5 years ago, was $441. We're now at $700.
Right.
So yes, they're coming off this. They've built lots of equity. The value of their home is skyrocketed in value. The ones now. But the people that are coming off these mortgages after 5 years, their value is skyrocketed.
Yep.
So they're
okay. You're right. They're okay.
Yeah.
That's why I say it's the second half of next year that it gets a little more dicey, because those are the ones that bought at that peak.
No equity.
And now the equity hasn't quite built up. So everybody that bought in 2020, they saw a lot of equity right away. I mean, within a year, you were up 150, 200,000. But if you bought in the second half of 2021 and early 2022, you bought at that peak, and now your mortgage is coming up for renewal, you don't have the equity built in that today's clients who bought 5 years ago have. That's where it's going to get tricky. And if the interest rates stay elevated the way they are, they're the ones that are going to feel it the most, because they won't have an option to be able to increase their amortization if they're still default insured and they don't have the 20% equity in that home.
Well, and I talk about average sale price in 2019 was $441. Next year it jumped to $529. Next year, which these are the people that are going to be coming off these. The average sale price was $645. Not much less than where we are right now. So You're right. These people are now coming off these rates.
They'd be underwater if they had to sell, wouldn't they?
Well, depending on when you bought. If you bought in that Jan, Feb, March, and April of 2022, that's when you're definitely underwater, 100% underwater. So if you bought in those months, let's hope you're playing the long game in real estate and you don't have to sell, because you haven't built any equity. In fact, you've lost equity in your home.
But keep in mind, if they got interest rates of 179, 189, a lot of that payment went towards principal. So they did build some equity.
Yes.
It's just not, if you bought with 5% down, you don't have that 20. You haven't built up to 20. You might have 10 or 15% in equity now because you were able to knock that mortgage down, but you don't have that 20%, which is what's needed to be able to refinance or re-amortize it to a longer period.
In any world, does it make sense to renew early?
In any world, only if you're carrying $100,000 in credit card debt and your mortgage is up in 6 months, and the penalty to pay it off 6 months early makes way more sense than carrying the credit cards for another 6 months where you can tie the credit cards into the mortgage. Then it makes sense to renew early. But apart from that, I mean, most customers that I talk to have very little debt that they want to refinance. If anything, all they want to do is increase the amortization. But there's no motivation there for them to early renew a mortgage of 194 and go into a 4 just for the sake of getting a higher amortization right now. Again, the only time to me it would make sense is if you've got a stack of debt that's at 20%, 18%, and you can knock it off 6, 7, 8 months early. That's the only time it makes sense, because outside of that, it doesn't make any sense to renew early at this.
So why is it being suggested then?
Well, because it's what's profitable for the banks. I mean,
I have to ask the stupid
Yeah,
question.
that was a dumb question, Stephen.
It was, but again, a lot of people get tricked. Canadians get tricked because they have so much trust and faith in their bank that the bank is giving them the best advice because they're very good at what they do, which is making money. But I think sometimes Canadians, we get a little too easy. We get talked into things too easily without thinking about them the way we should. And the reason the banks are very successful at what they do and make the money they do is because they can trick Canadians into believing that what they're doing is for their best, when in essence the bank is always doing what's in their best bottom line.
And keep in mind, a lot of consumers out there don't know. I mean, listen, I run into a lot of real estate agents that don't know what the rates are. So let alone these consumers out there, they get their bank calling them and saying, hey, it's a really smart move to refinance right now. Well, you think, okay, I got to trust my bank. I mean, they got my best interest at heart, so I'm definitely going to sign that. The problem being is you'll be shocked at how many people don't really understand interest rates, where they should be, what different mortgage products. Most people just think there's only a 5-year fixed out there. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people I talk to, they're like, what do you mean? There's this variable and adjustable? What does all that mean? So there's a lot of people that don't know, and they trust their bank, and they're going to sign what their bank sends you because they believe the bank has their best interests at heart. And it doesn't. Do your research. Do your homework.
So that doesn't bother me, though, as much as a bank employee who tells a client that a mortgage broker is going to put him with a lender that, has a lot of fine print in it and is going to steer them wrong, or says something like, no, the penalty structure is the same with everybody, which is totally false. And again, an example, and I can put my hand up and say that I was there. I was ignorant. Why? Because your bank teaches you their products, and they make you believe that their products are the same across the board with everyone. And that's the farthest thing from the truth, because they're not. Non-bank lenders who get their money from banks, a lot of them are funded by the big banks, have significantly better mortgage offers. The rates may not always be better than the banks, but if you look at the total mortgage, the prepayment privileges, if you had to break the mortgage early because something negative occurred, like a health scare, like a job loss, and you had to sell your home because you just simply can't afford it anymore, and you have to break that mortgage through a non-bank lender, you'll understand the penalty. It'll make total sense why the penalty is what it is. Through a bank, you're going to scratch your head and say, I don't get it. Why is my penalty $25,000 when really the rates are almost the same today as what they're lending out, and yet I'm paying a $25,000 penalty instead of a 3-month interest? Because the fine print says, here's what we're going to do. And what bothers me most is when a customer calls me and says, my bank says that you're lying to us and you're telling us that the penalty, they're saying that the penalty is the same no matter where you go, and it's the farthest thing from the truth.
I've actually seen people who are in a bank mortgage and maybe going through a divorce or something, and by the time they find out what their penalty is, their real estate commissions, their lawyers' fees,
they can't sell.
They can't sell. They can't, and some of these people are going through a divorce, and they're like, we can't afford to sell. Especially people who bought at the wrong time, like we were talking about, and now they got a $25,000, $30,000 penalty. They got to pay an agent. They got to pay a lawyer. It doesn't make sense to sell, and there's a lot of people because of bank penalties that are in that position, which is shameful.
And really,
they start thinking my spouse isn't so bad.
Yeah, I actually like you again. I actually like you again. Yeah,
and really, every single Canadian should have a conversation with the mortgage agent, mortgage broker, and not just trust what the bank is telling them. Period.
Yeah, take all the advice.
That's simple.
Yeah. Do your homework.
Do your homework.
But there's still ignorance out there that banks are saying, oh, you go see Frank over at Mortgage Broker. There's fees, there's this, and You do the same product, it's just you're shopping different banks.
Yep.
There's ignorance everywhere, sometimes in this very room.
Stephen, I hope you're not talking about me.
521-521-8255. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Frank Napolitano is here. Paul Rushforth is here. Greg is here. Steve is here.
Yeah. Steve Gregory is here, and Greg Tilley is here.
Happy now?
Yeah.
So prices went up in May. Do you think they're going to go up again in June?
I think so. I think we'll see prices, modestly will go up. I mean, keep in mind our average sale price. First of all, the number of sales for a while was down in the Ottawa real estate market, but we had a really, really strong last month. They went up almost 15%, which brought us to a flat market, which is great.
Didn't prices go up like 5%?
Yeah, they did. And so now we're at about 2.4% year to date average sale price going up. So it's hard to tell. I like to base it on how we did in the market, thinking, hoping the real estate market did similar to what we did. So I'd like to see. I think we're going to see the number of sales will be up, and I think we'll probably see the average sale price was up as well.
Not another 5%.
No, because I don't think June was anywhere strong as May. To be honest with you, I think. I think in June people are worrying more about the graduations and kids getting out of school and things like that. And then I think July comes around and the real estate market will pick up a little bit. And then I think August comes around and I think families are like, oh crap, we haven't gone on vacation yet. We got to go on vacation before the kids go back to school.
Yeah.
So August might be a little bit slower than July, but I think we'll probably see a very strong July. We'll see a decent June, a strong July. And then August will usually peter off a little bit, and then September and October will pick up again before, dropping in November and December. But I always say, when you say, when's the best time to sell a home? And Yesterday, but the
day before.
But listen, the truth is there's no bad time, because you're either putting your house on the market or looking for a house in a November, December market. Well, there's less activity, but there's also less homes. So you don't have as much competition. Or you wait until the spring market where there's more homes on the market, but more people looking for homes.
But if you have a summer home, now's the time.
Well, the summer home, there's a lot of times we'll give advice to people. They got a beautiful backyard, and they're like, yeah, we want to list in February. And I'm like, you might want to hold off unless we get Greg in there beforehand and we can showcase the summer pictures. But if you've forgotten to do that, and we're now in March, and you have this gorgeous backyard, it might make sense to wait for the snow to disappear and wait until more of a summer type of market, which we actually had one home that had a gorgeous backyard. They had to get it on the market, so we put it on in a wintry market, and we sold it the first day, which eventually fell apart, which really slowed down this sale. We actually took it off the market for a couple months until we were able to open the pool and get the pool looking gorgeous.
Yeah.
Greg went back and shot some great summer pictures, and it makes a world of a difference. So it all depends on where your house is, what the competition is, and whether one of your biggest selling features is your yard. And if it is your yard, you have to showcase that biggest selling feature.
Frank, how's the appetite for first-time home buyers now?
It's pretty good. But again, I mean, a lot of them, unfortunately, are still having to either get a family member to assist sometimes as a guarantor. I think it's a great program that's not utilized enough. And for those listening, the banks force parents to be co-signers. The banks don't have a guarantor program where through a mortgage agent, mortgage broker, we have the guarantor program where we're able to utilize the parents' income to get the child to qualify, the adult child to qualify. But because we're able to do that, but we can put them on as a guarantor, which means they don't go on title, and technically they're not on the mortgage. They're on the mortgage as a guarantor, but what that means is that it doesn't show up on the credit bureau, doesn't show up anywhere with the exception of you're a guarantor. And the only time that the institution is going to reach out to you for payment is if there's obviously, you're behind on payments, your child's behind on payments, then they'll reach out to you. And and there's scenarios that I've seen where now the parents aren't talking to the child because they're not necessarily in agreement with what they're doing. If that's the case, then the parent can say, nope, we're not bringing the payments up to date. The bank or the lender will take their legal action. And if there's a loss, that's when the parent's at risk. But if there's no loss on the file, then the parent's not at risk anymore.
Otherwise, your credit score will take a pretty good hit, wouldn't it?
Well, so a parent's credit score doesn't get impacted because the mortgage doesn't show up on the credit bureau.
As a guarantor, no, but a cosigner, yes.
A cosigner, of course it would. Yeah, your credit score would take a huge hit. Not only that, it would also take away some of your borrowing power because now you've got that mortgage as well.
What are some other creative ways to get somebody into a house for the first time?
we're seeing friends buy houses together, and again, I mean,
I don't recommend that.
I don't recommend it, but I say if it means getting into a house and you guys get along really well, that's great. But make sure you have something in writing should something go sideways as to what the exit strategies are, because those are so important today. The last thing you need is, and it's no different in a marriage. I mean, if you're both in second marriages, I mean, I don't know what that's like, but if you're both in second marriages,
poor guy,
poor guy. But if you're in second marriages, I mean, you want to make sure that you outline who's putting what into the property and what the exit strategy is should something go sideways again.
The biggest problem with friends buying houses together is either someone marital status changes, occupation changes. If one person has to sell, and a lot of times you can put a contract together, but let's say, Steve, you and I buy a house together and something happens where you desperately have to sell that house and I can't afford it myself.
Yeah.
I then have to sell that house with you. So, and that happens a lot. If you're right at the threshold of not being able to buy it yourself and you buy it with a friend and one person changes their mind, it screws both of you, to be honest with you. So
I've read that couples are actually doing it together.
What do you mean? Oh, yeah, I've heard of couples doing which
buying homes. Get your mind out of the gutter.
I was like, what are you talking about, Steve? This is a real estate mortgage show. But you're right. But that's a stupid move too. I don't recommend it at all. That's a risky proposition, regardless if you have a contract in place or not.
Birthdays, Frank?
Yep, got a couple. My sister Maria celebrated her birthday this week, so happy birthday to my sis. Franco Briglio, one of our agents, celebrated his birthday. My father-in-law had his birthday last weekend, and since I wasn't here, I missed telling my favorite father-in-law happy birthday. My son-in-law celebrates his birthday this week, so happy birthday to Shaf.
And you don't want to mention your father-in-law's name?
Carmelo. How's that? Carmelo. Good friends of mine, Frank Adamo and Crystal, getting married today. Again, so congratulations to them. And obviously, patriotic. Happy Canada Day to all.
Yes.
It's going to be a great week. And I don't think we're going to be too busy on Monday. I imagine we're not going to be that busy because I think everybody's taking the long weekend off.
I think so, too. I have Sarah O'Connor, who's my closing coordinator. It's actually her birthday today. And I actually had a wonderful week this week watching both of my kids. My daughter graduated from Queen's University.
Nice.
And my son is literally a 1-week course away from being a real estate agent.
Wow.
So he passed phase 4, which is a very challenging commercial course. And he passed it with flying colors. And he's 1 week away from being 1 week course away from being a real estate agent.
What'd your daughter graduate in?
Health sciences.
And what does she want to do?
She wants to be a real estate agent. Thanks, Steve.
That was money well spent.
Thanks, Frank. I appreciate that.
That was money well spent in university.
Well, you know what it was, because she broadened her horizons and she learned to live on her own and learned a lot of valuable skills.
I agree.
Well, and you got to be educated to sell real estate.
100%.
Can't be a moron. Not everybody can do what you did.
Wow, Stephen. Wow.
Oh, back to Stephen.
Yeah.
Happy Canada Day, and please support local Canadian businesses and charities, everyone.